where does pain come from? Like, I'm just thinking in terms of, if I stubbed my toe the other day, is the pain being felt in my toe, or is the pain being felt in my brain leading to the toe?
Yeah, well, the pain is being felt in your brain because pain is a combination of the sensations that get to the brain and what your brain thinks those sensations mean. So even the earliest nematode, the earliest little worms, if you touch them with something that's painful, then they move away. So pain is just your safety system. But as you get more evolutionarily advanced, your brain is able to put context around pain so that you can avoid it in the future. So that context is fear. And that pain sensation, there are a number of different things that happen. So there are a bunch of different areas of the brain that from when you're a baby to when you're an adult, the same areas of sensation and pain light up with the same stimulus. So the nerves that bring the neurotransmitters that make your brain feel pain, it's still your brain interpreting it. I think what is new is that there's a lot of what we perceive as pain that is actually association. So when you have the brain that receives the neurotransmitters that say danger, some of the brain's capacity is able to dampen that down if it knows that you're safe. Like I said about giving birth and having oxytocin. So there's the pain neurotransmitters of glutamate, but there's a lot of other neurotransmitters that can modify that. So if you know you're safe, even though it's very painful, then you don't activate the whole fear area that amplifies your perception of pain.
Okay.
If you have opioids that make you feel great, even though you're still feeling pain, your brain says, I feel great, we must be safe. There are areas that are looking at what meaning is. Like, does this mean I will get to get out of something I don't want to do? They found that soldiers who had an injury on the battlefield that was the same as somebody who is not on the battlefield, the people who weren't on the battlefield felt much more pain because the soldiers knew this injury was going to mean they could go home. So meaning very much impacts pain. Of course, your football and my football are different. But,
yeah.
But if you are knocked over in an alley by a stranger and you painfully hit the ground, that exact same force and fall are going to be perceived very differently if you're in the end zone and you've just caught a football. You don't feel any pain then when the stranger knocks you over to the ground because you've just won the game for your team. So the meaning and the fear, all of that sort of thing, change very much how you perceive pain.
Is that adrenaline that kind of blocks it off, or is it perception?
It's multiple things, but it's meaning. There's something now they call connectomes. And it's not just meaning, it's also memory. It's also what else your brain is doing. And so you can see this resting state in the brain that connects the thalamus, which is sort of the switchboard, and it connects to the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the assessor that makes sense of things. And so when the anterior cingulate cortex receives a message of pain, it decides to send it to the amygdala for fear, and the hippocampus for memory, and the right frontal cortex, which is, oh my God, what does this mean for me? And what have we done in the past? One of the things we did early on with our research was we would activate the anterior cingulate cortex by giving it a little task. And it was as simple as, okay, so which of these two cows are the same?
The top left and the middle? No, the top left and the...
I will tell you, my eyes, I got to put on my smart glasses to see. Let's see here.
The bottom... Sorry, the two at the side in the middle. Like the two at the side of the middle, if that makes sense. The left and the right. No, one of them has a bit of red on it.
Yeah, they got different heads, but yeah, that design and that design. Yeah. So anyway, by using these cards, we were able to decrease pain of needle procedures for kids by half. And what's happening there is that you're paying so much attention to something else that feels safe that your anterior cingulate cortex can't alert all these other places. And so you don't feel pain because that connection, all that pain connectome, which is your experiences and your expectations and your coping mechanisms and the meaning and the danger, all of that doesn't happen if the part that's supposed to be the switchboard is like, guys, look at this. There's cows. Seriously, cows. 2 of them. Check them out. So it's not adrenaline, although that's a different mechanism, and that can also work that way. But even without adrenaline, it's really the context. You know, if you are held down at a dentist's office and someone starts putting small needles into you, you're going to be screaming. But if you paid 200 quid to get a really cool tattoo that goes from here down to here, and all your buddies are around and excited, even if it's exactly the same pain from a stimulus standpoint, you're not going to feel the same pain.
What about when children have their parents there? Like, it seems to me, you see, when I had my mum around me, I would always end up crying when I was really young. Like, it would be like I'd skid, I'd hit my knee, and I'd cry because my mum was there. Whereas if I was just around my friends or school, people at school, all of a sudden I wouldn't have that adverse reaction because is that safety? Like, is that meaning that, like, I know that my mum is safe so I can feel more pain? Like, how does that work?
Or that you get a reward. You know, if you cry and your mother immediately gives you a treat and hugs you, I don't mind crying so much. Whereas if you cry and all of your friends tell you you're a loser, then you mind crying a little bit more. It again, it's context. It's what you come to expect. Even with getting jabs, as you call them. So when, at least in the States, and this may be very culturally different, but children do cry less and show less pain when their father brings them than when their mother brings them. And also, when you have a mother who is warm but authoritative, it's like, yeah, I know this isn't fun, but we're going to do this, and this is what you got to do, and you're strong and you can do it, and that kind of thing. Those kids also do better and have less needle fear later than kids whose mothers are also upset by watching their child get the jabs. One of the early pieces of research I did that was part of why I left pediatrics and started working with opioids out of frustration, the very first study that I did was looking at making a vibrating device to block needle pain. I was sure I had messed the research up because we had, in our 12-year-old sample, we had 67% of them were severely afraid of needles. And I was like, all right, that's too many. So we must have biased the group. Then a researcher in Canada published something that found that 67% of the kids that she asked about were afraid of needles. And I was like, all right, this is much too similar to be coincidental. So we went back, and what we found was that it didn't matter how many vaccines kids got before age 2. But once they were 4, 5, or 6 years old, the number of jabs on the same day predicted if they were going to be afraid of needles later. So you look like you're young enough that you probably got 24 to 30 injections before you were 6 years old. Most of them you would have gotten before you were old enough to remember. I got 6 before I was 2 years old, and that was it. Because we didn't start giving the extra booster jabs until the early 80s. And I was born in 69. So I didn't get those extra shots. So I'm not afraid of needles, and I think it's because I know now, but most adults who are of my generation think you guys are wimps. You got too much reality TV, too much, just coddling. But what instead happened is we very predictably caused a generation to be afraid of needles. Right before COVID, once we got the vaccines, I testified to the Department of Health and Human Services in the U.S. And I said, look, it was February 4th in 2021. We'd just gotten vaccines. And I said, I know people are dressing up as grandmothers now to get vaccinated. But in the UK, 15% of people will not get vaccinated because they're afraid of needles. And in the US, it's going to be 26%. So we have to find ways to not humiliate people, but to give them an option that will help undo some of this fear that we've set because of the way we give boosters between age 4 and 6.
And that piece of kit that kind of vibrated, did it have ice on it as well? It was called Buzzy?
Yes. I don't have a Buzzy around, but that's Ladybuzz, same thing.
Right, okay.
But it is, the motor is where, there's a motor where the dot is. And
right.
What it's doing, it turns out, there's an ice pack that goes with it. There. So ice and vibration together. When I first made this in 2004, my idea was that you would do something that would be like when running water makes a burn stop hurting. As soon as you've got a burn, you stick it under cold water, the burn stops hurting. So I was thinking that cold motion was what I wanted to do to block the pain. Turns out that just like with the cold motion thing, when you take away that stimulus, the burn pain comes back, And also, if you don't have a burn on your finger and you put it under cold water, it just feels like cold water. It doesn't do anything unless you're actually blocking pain. What matters is the vibration. And the frequency of vibration is the right frequency to cause a neurotransmitter called adenosine to be released in the spine, and that adenosine blocks the track that takes pain up to the brain. So there's actually a study that just got finished. We would tell people for jabs, okay, put it here and then move it up and do the injection. And this guy in Colombia came up to me at a American Academy of Pediatrics, and he said, aquí no, aquí todo el tiempo nunca dolor, no pain at all. And so somebody tested it, and actually it got rid of 93% of the pain. And 25 out of 30 13-year-olds felt zero pain using it right here as opposed to right here. And the reason is because there are multiple different nerve pathways. There's some that come down here and there's some here. And there's a lot of these motion vibration nerves that are in the joint because, you need to know where your body is in space. Mm-hmm. So by juicing all of those at the same time, it dumps more of this pain blocking neurotransmitter into the spine. And so the more areas you can juice at the same time, the less pain you get. And we've got these videos of these kids going, really? Why didn't it hurt? So that's that is the device that I made. And that's what I tested when I found that we had all these kids who were afraid of needles, and then went back and found they're afraid because we're holding down these 4 to 6 year olds and giving them all these jabs. And in the UK, you didn't get the varicella vaccine. And that's why only 15% in the UK didn't get vaccinated because of a fear of needles, whereas in the US, it was about 26%.
If you guys enjoyed that clip, please do me a huge favor before you go and head over to our Into the Mind podcast official page where we have the raw, uncut Into the Mind podcast, and hit that subscribe button. And the more subscribers we get, the more incredible guests we can get on the show. I really appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you so much. And I'll see you all real soon.